Book 1, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Aeneid, by Publius Virgilius Maro, translated by John Dryden. Book 1, A Fateful Haven, Part 1. Arms, and the man I sing, who, forced by fate and haughty Juno's unrelenting hate, expelled and exiled, left the Trojan shore. Long labours, both by sea and land, he bore, and in the doubtful war, before he won the Latian realm, and built the destined town, his banished gods restored to rights divine, and settled sure succession in his line, from whence the race of Alban fathers come, and the long glories of majestic Rome. O Muse, the causes and the crimes relate. What goddess was provoked, and whence her hate? For what offence the Queen of Heaven began to persecute so brave, so just a man? Involved his anxious life in endless cares, exposed to wants, and hurried into wars. Can heavenly minds such high resentment show, or exercise their spite in human woe? Against the Tiber's mouth, but far away, an ancient town was seated on the sea, a Tyrian colony, the people made stout for the war and studious of their trade. Carthage the name, beloved by Juno more than her own Argos or the Samian shore. Here stood her chariot. Here, if heaven were kind, the seat of awful empire she designed. Yet she had heard an ancient rumour fly, long cited by the people of the sky, that times to come should see the Trojan race her Carthage ruin, and her towers deface. Nor, thus confined, the yoke of sovereign sway should on the necks of all the nations lay. She pondered this, and feared it was in fate, nor could forget the war she waged of late for conquering Greece against the Trojan state. Besides, long causes working in her mind, and secret seeds of envy lay behind. Deep graven in her heart, the doom remained of partial Paris, and her form disdained. The grace bestowed on ravished Ganymed, Electra's glories, and her injured bed. Each was a cause alone, and all combined to kindle vengeance in her haughty mind. For this, far distant from the Latian coast, she drove the remnants of the Trojan host, and 7 long years the unhappy wandering train were tossed by storms and scattered through the main. Such time, such toil required the Roman name, such length of labour for so vast a frame. Now, scarce the Trojan fleet with sails and oars had left behind the fair Sicilian shores, entering with cheerful shouts the watery Rhine, ploughing frothy furrows in the main, when, labouring still with endless discontent, the Queen of Heaven did thus her fury vent. Then am I vanquished? Must I yield, said she, and must the Trojans reign in Italy? So fate will have it, and Jove adds his force, nor can my power divert their happy course. Could angry Pallas, with revengeful spleen, the Grecian navy burn, and drown the men? She, for the fault of one offending foe, the bolts of Jove himself presumed to throw. With whirlwinds from beneath she tossed the ship, and bare exposed the bosom of the deep. Then, as an eagle gripes the trembling game, the wretch, yet hissing with her father's flame, she strongly seized, and with a burning wound transfixed, and naked on a rock she bound. But I, who walk in awful state above the majesty of heaven, the sister wife of Jove, for length of years my fruitless force employ against the thin remains of ruined Troy. what nations now to Juno's power will pray, or offerings on my slighted altars lay? Thus raged the goddess, and with fury fraught. The restless regions of the storms she sought, where, in a spacious cave of living stone, the tyrant Aeolus from his airy throne with power imperial curbs the struggling winds, and sounding tempests in dark prisons binds. This way and that the impatient captives tend, and, pressing for release, the mountains rend. High in his hall the undaunted monarch stands, and shakes his sceptre, and their rage commands, which, did he not, their unresisted sway would sweep the world before them in their way. Earth, air, and seas through empty space would roll, and heaven would fly before the driving soul. In fear of this, the father of the gods confined their fury to those dark abodes, and locked them safe within, oppressed with mountain loads, imposed a king with arbitrary sway to loose their fetters or their force allay, to whom the suppliant queen her prayers addressed, and thus the tenor of her suit expressed. O Aeolus, for to thee the King of heaven the power of tempests and of winds has given. Thy force alone their fury can restrain, and smooth the waves, or swell the troubled main. A race of wandering slaves, abhorred by me, with prosperous passage cut the Tuscan sea, to fruitful Italy their course they steer, and for their vanquished gods design new temples there. Raise all thy winds, with night involve the skies, sink or disperse my fatal enemies. Twice 7, the charming daughters of the main around my person wait, and bear my train. Succeed my wish, and second my design, the fairest Deiopeia shall be thine, and make thee father of a happy line. To this the god, 'tis yours, O queen, to will the work which duty binds me to fulfil. These airy kingdoms and this wide command are all the presents of your bounteous hand. Yours is my sovereign's grace, and, as your guest, I sit with gods at their celestial feast. Raise tempests at your pleasure, or subdue, dispose of empire, which I hold from you. He said, and hurled against the mountain's side his quivering spear, and all the god applied. The raging winds rush through the hollow wound, and dance aloft in air, skim along the ground, then, settling on the sea, the surges sweep, raise liquid mountains, and disclose the deep. South, east, and west with mixed confusion roar, and roll the foaming billows to the shore. The cables crack, the sailors' fearful cries ascend, and sable night involves the skies, and heaven itself is ravished from their eyes. Loud peals of thunder from the poles ensue, then flashing fires the transient light renew. The face of things a frightful image bears, and present death in various forms appears. Struck with unusual fright, the Trojan chief with lifted hands and eyes invokes relief, and thrice and 4 times happy those, he cried, that under Ilian walls before their parents died. Tydides, bravest of the Grecian train, why could not I by that strong arm be slain, and lie by noble Hector on the plain? Or great Sarpedon, in those bloody fields where Simois rolls the bodies and the shields of heroes, whose dismembered hands yet bear the dart aloft, and clench the pointed spear. Thus, while the pious prince his fate bewails, fierce Boreas drove against his flying sails, and rent the sheets. The raging billows rise, and mount the tossing vessels to the skies, nor can the shivering oars sustain the blow. The galley gives her side, and turns her prow, while those astern, descending from the steep, through gaping waves behold the boiling deep. 3 ships were harried by the southern blast, and on the secret shelves with fury cast. Those hidden rocks the Ausonian sailors knew; they called them altars when they rose in view, and showed their spacious backs above the flood. 3 more, fierce Eurus in his angry mood dashed on the shallows of the moving sand, and in mid-ocean left them moored aland. Orontes' bark, that bore the Lycian crew, a horrid sight, even in the hero's view, from stem to stern by waves was overborne. The trembling pilot from his rudder torn was headlong hurled, thrice round the ship was tossed, then bulged at once, and in the deep was lost. And here and there above the waves were seen arms, pictures, precious goods, and floating men. The stoutest vessel to the storm gave way, and sucked through loosened planks the rushing sea. Ilioneus was her chief. Alethes old, Achates faithful, Abas young and bold, endured not less. Their ships, with gaping seams, admit the deluge of the briny streams. Meantime, imperial Neptune heard the sound of raging billows breaking on the ground. Displeased, and fearing for his watery reign, he reared his awful head above the main, serene in majesty, then rolled his eyes around the space of earth and seas and skies. He saw the Trojan fleet dispersed, distressed by stormy winds and wintry heaven oppressed. Full well the god his sister's envy knew, and what her aims and what her arts pursue. He summoned Eurus and the western blast, and first an angry glance on both he cast, then thus rebuked: "Audacious winds, from whence this bold attempt, this rebel insolence? Is it for you to ravage seas and land, unauthorized by my supreme command? To raise such mountains on the troubled main, whom I, first, is fit the billows to restrain, and then you shall be taught obedience to my reign. Hence, to your lord my royal mandate bear. The realms of ocean and the fields of air are mine, not his. By fatal lot to me the liquid empire fell, and trident the sea. His power to hollow caverns is confined. There let him reign, the jailer of the wind. With hoarse commands his breathing subjects call, and boast and bluster in his empty hall." He spoke, and while he spoke he smoothed the sea, dispelled the darkness, and restored the day. Timothy, Triton, and the sea-green train of beauteous nymphs, the daughters of the main, clear from the rocks the vessels with their hands. The god himself with ready trident stands, and opes the deep, and spreads the moving sands, then heaves them off the shoals. Where'er he guides his finny coursers, and in triumph rides, the waves unruffle, and the sea subsides. As when in tumults rise the ignoble crowd, mad are their notions, and their tongues are loud, and stones and brands in rattling volleys fly, and all the rustic arms that fury can supply. If then some grave and pious man appear, they hush their noise, and lend a listening ear. He soothes with sober words their angry mood, and quenches their innate desire of blood. So, when the father of the flood appears, and o'er the seas his sovereign trident rears, their fury falls. He skims the liquid plains high on his chariot, and with loosened reins majestic moves along, and awful peace maintains. The weary Trojans ply their shattered oars to nearest land, and make the Libyan shores. Within a long recess there lies a bay. An island shades it from the rolling sea, and forms a port secure for ships to ride. Broke by the jutting land on either side, in double streams the briny waters glide. Betwixt 2 rows of rocks a sylvan scene appears above, and groves for ever green. A grot is formed beneath, with mossy seats to rest the Nereids and exclude the heats. Down through the crannies of the living walls the crystal streams descend in murmuring falls. No hawsers need to bind the vessels here, nor bearded anchors, for no storms they fear. 7 ships within this happy harbour meet, the thin remainders of the scattered fleet. The Trojans, worn with toils and spent with woes, leap on the welcome land and seek their wished repose. First, good Achates, with repeated strokes of clashing flints, their hidden fire provokes. Short flame succeeds. A bed of withered leaves the dying sparkles in their fall receives. Caught into life in fiery fumes they rise, and, fed with stronger food, invade the skies. The Trojans, dropping wet, or stand round the cheerful blaze, or lie along the ground. Some dry their corn, infected with the brine, then grind with marbles and prepare to die. Aeneas climbs the mountain's airy brow, and takes a prospect of the seas below. If Capys thence, or Antheus he could spy, or see the streamers of Caicus fly. No vessels were in view, but on the plain 3 beamy stags command a lordly train of branching heads. The more ignoble throng attend their stately steps, and slowly graze along. He stood, and while secure they fed below, he took the quiver, and the trusty bow Achates used to bear. The leaders first he laid along, and then the vulgar pierced, nor ceased his arrows, till the shady plain 7 mighty bodies with their blood disdain. For the 7 ships he made an equal share, and to the port returned, triumphant from the war. The jars of generous wine, Acestes' gift, when his Trinacrian shores the navy left, he set a broach, and for the feast prepared, in equal portions with the venison shared. Thus, while he dealt it round, the pious chief with cheerful words allayed the common grief. Endure and conquer! Jove will soon dispose to future good our past and present woes. With me the rocks of Scylla you have tried, the inhuman Cyclops in his den defy. What greater ills hereafter can you bear? Resume your courage, and dismiss your care. An hour will come, with pleasure to relate your sorrows past, as benefits of fate. Through various hazards and events we move to Latium, and the realms foredoomed by Jove. Called to the seat, the promise of the skies, where Trojan kingdoms once again may rise. Endure the hardships of your present state, live, and reserve yourselves for better fate. These words he spoke, but spoke not from his heart. His outward smiles concealed his inward smart. The jolly crew, unmindful of the past, the quarry share, their plenteous dinner haste. Some strip the skin, some portion out the spoil, the limbs yet trembling in the cauldrons boil. Some on the fire the reeking entrails broil. Stretched on the grassy turf, at ease they dine, restore their strength with meat, and cheer their souls with wine. Their hunger thus appeased, their care attends the doubtful fortune of their absent friends. Alternate hopes and fears their minds possess, whether to deem them dead or in distress. Above the rest, Aeneas mourns the fate of brave Orontes, and the uncertain state of Gyas, Lycus, and of Amycus. The day, but not their sorrows, ended thus. When, from aloft, almighty Jove surveys earth, air, and shores, and navigable seas, at length on Libyan realms he fixed his eyes, whom, pondering thus on human miseries, when Venus saw, she with a lowly look, not free from tears, her heavenly sire bespoke. O King of gods and men, whose awful hand disperses thunder on the seas and land, disposing all with absolute command, how could my pious son thy power incense? Or what, alas, is vanished Troy's offence? our hope of Italy not only lost on various seas by various tempests tossed, but shut from every shore and barred from every coast. You promised once a progeny divine of Romans rising from the Trojan line, after times should hold the world in awe, and to the land and ocean give the law. How is your doom reversed, which eased my care when Troy was ruined in that cruel war? Then fates to fates I could oppose, but now, when fortune still pursues her former blow, what can I hope? What worse can still succeed? What end of labours has your will decreed? Antenor from the midst of Grecian hosts could pass secure, and pierce the Illyrian coasts, where, rolling down the steep Timarus raves, and through 9 channels disembogues his waves. At length he founded Padua's happy seat, and gave his Trojans a secure retreat. There fixed their arms, and there renewed their name, and there in quiet rules and crowned with fame. But we, descended from your sacred line, entitled to your heaven rights divine, are banished earth, and for the wrath of one removed from Latium and the promised throne. Are these our sceptres? These our due rewards? And is it thus that Jove his plighted faith regards? To whom? The father of the immortal race, smiling with that serene, indulgent face with which he drives the clouds and clears the skies, first gave a holy kiss, then thus replies: Daughter, dismiss thy fears. To thy desire the fates of thine are fixed, and stand entire. Thou shalt behold thy wished Lavinian walls, and, ripe for heaven, when fate Aeneas calls, then shalt thou bear him up sublime to me. No counsels have reversed my firm decree, and, lest new fears disturb thy happy state, know, I have searched the mystic rolls of fate. Thy son, nor is the appointed season far, in Italy shall wage successful war, shall tame fierce nations in the bloody field, and sovereign laws impose, and cities build, till, after every foe subdued, the sun thrice through the signs his annual race shall run. This is his time prefixed. Ascanius, then, now called Iulus, shall begin his reign. He 30 rolling years the crown shall wear, then from Lavinium shall the seat transfer, and, with hard labour, Alba Longa build. The throne, with his succession, shall be filled 300 circuits more. Then shall be seen Ilia the fair, a priestess and a queen, who, full of Mars in time, with kindly throes, shall at a birth 2 goodly boys disclose. The royal babes a tawny wolf shall drain. Then Romulus his grandsire's throne shall gain. Of martial powers the founder shall become. The people Romans call, the city Rome. To them no bounds of empire I assign, nor term of years to their immortal line. Even haughty Juno, who with endless broils earth, seas, and heaven, and Jove himself turmoils, at length atone, her friendly power shall join to cherish and advance the Trojan line. The subject world shall Rome's dominion own, and prostrate shall adore the nation of the gown. An age is ripening in revolving fate, when Troy shall overturn the Grecian state, and sweet revenge her conquering sons shall call, to crush the people that conspired her fall. Then Caesar from the Julian stock shall rise, whose empire ocean, and whose fame the skies alone shall bound, whom, fraught with eastern spoils, our heaven, the just reward of human toils, securely shall repay with rites divine, and incense shall ascend before his sacred shrine. Then dire debate and impious war shall cease, and the stern age be softened to peace. Then banished faith shall once again return, and vestal fires in hallowed temples burn, and Remus with Quirinus shall sustain the righteous laws, fraud and force restrain. Janus himself before his fane shall wait, and keep the dreadful issues of his gate with bolts and iron bars. Within remains imprisoned Fury, bound in brazen chains. High on a trophy raised of useless arms he sits, and threats the world with vain alarms. He said, and sent Hellenius with command to free the ports and open Punic land to Trojan guests, lest, ignorant of fate, the queen might force them from her town and state. Down from the steep of heaven Hellenius flies, and cleaves with all his wings the yielding skies. Soon on the Libyan shore descends the god, performs his message, and displays his rod. The surly murmurs of the people cease, and, as the fates required, they give the peace. The queen herself suspends the rigid laws, the Trojans pities, and protects their cause. Meantime, in shades of night Aeneas lies, care seized his soul and sleep forsook his eyes. But when the sun restored the cheerful day, he rose, the coast and country to survey, anxious and eager to discover more. It looked a wild, uncultivated shore, but whether humankind or beasts alone possessed the new-found region was unknown. Beneath a ledge of rocks his fleet he hides, tall trees surround the mountain's shady sides, the bending brow above a safe retreat provides. Armed with two pointed darts, he leaves his friends, and true Achates on his steps attends. Lo, in the deep recesses of the wood before his eyes, his goddess mother stood, a huntress in her habit and her mien, her dress Aeneid, her air confessed queen. Bare were her knees, and knots her garments bind, loose was her hair, and wantoned in the wind. Her hand sustained a bow, her quiver hung behind. She seemed a virgin of the Spartan blood. With such array Harpalyce bestrode her Thracian courser, and outstripped the rapid flood. "Hold, strangers, have you lately seen," she said, "one of my sisters, like myself arrayed, who crossed the lawn or in the forest strayed? A painted quiver at her back she bore, varied with spots, a lynx's hide she wore, and at full cry pursued the tusky boar." End of Book 1, Part 1.
Come on, man.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Joseph Early. The Aeneid by Publius Virgilius Maro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 1, A Fateful Haven, Part 2. Thus Venus. Thus her son replied again, None of your sisters have we seen or heard, O Virgin, or what a name you bear above that style. O more than mortal fair, your voice and mien celestial birth betray. If, as you seem the daughter of the day, or one at least of chaste Diana's train, let not an humble suppliant sue in vain, but tell a stranger, long in tempest tossed, what earth we tread, and who commands the coast. Then on your name shall wretched mortals call, and offered victims at your altars fall. I dare not, she replied, assume the name of goddess or celestial honors claim. For Tyrian virgins bows and quivers bear, and purple buskins o'er their ankles wear. No, gentle youth, in Libyan lands you are, a people rude in peace and rough in war. The rising city, which from far you see, is Carthage, an Tyrian colony. Phoenician Dido rules the growing state, who fled from Tyre to shun her brother's hate. Great were her wrongs, her story full of fate, which I will sum in short. Sichaeus, known for wealth and brother to the Punic throne, possessed fair Dido's bed, and either heart at once was wounded with an equal dart. Her father gave her, yet a spotless maid, Pygmalion, then the Tyrian scepter's sway, one who condemned divine and human law. Then strife ensued, and cursed gold the cause. The monarch, blinded by desire of wealth, with steel invades his brother's life by stealth. Before the sacred altar made him bleed, and long from her concealed the cruel deed. Some tale, some new pretense he daily coined to soothe his sister and delude her mind. At last, in dead of night, the ghost appears of their unhappy lord. The spectre stared, and with erected eyes his bloody bosom bares. The cruel altars and his fate he tells, and the dire secret of his house reveals. Then warns the widow with her household gods to seek a refuge in remote abodes. Last, to support her in so long a way, he shows her where his hidden treasure lay. Admonished thus, and seized with mortal fright, the queen provides companions of her flight. They meet, and all combine to leave the state who hate the tyrant, or who fear his hate. They seize a fleet, which ready rigg'd they find, nor is Pygmalion's treasure left behind. The vessels, heavy laden, put to sea. With prosperous winds, a woman leads the way. I know not if by stress or weather driven, or was their fatal course disposed by heaven. At last they landed, where from far your eyes may view the turrets of New Carthage rise. There bought a space of ground, which Brysa called from the bull's hide, they first enclosed and walled. But whence are you? What country claims your birth? What seek you, strangers, on our Libyan earth? To whom, with sorrow streaming from his eyes and deeply sighing, thus her son replied: Could you with patience hear, or I relate, O nymph, the tedious annals of our fate? Through such a train of woes if I should run, the day would sooner than the tale be done. From ancient Troy by force expelled we came, if you by chance have heard the Trojan name. On various seas by various tempests tossed, at length we landed on your Libyan coast. The good Aeneas I am called, a name while fortune favored not unknown to fame. My household gods, companions of my woes, with pious care I rescued from our foes. To fruitful Italy my course was bent, and from the King of Heaven is my descent. With twice 10 sails I cross'd the Phrygian sea. Fate and my mother goddess led my way. Scarce 7 the thin remainders of my fate from storms preserved within your harbour meet. Myself distress'd, an exile and unknown, debarred from Europe and from Asia thrown, in Libyan deserts wander thus alone. His tender parent could no longer bear, but interposing sought to soothe his care. Where you are, not unbeloved by heaven, since on our friendly shore your ships are driven, have courage, to the gods permit the rest, and to the queen expose your just request. Now take this earnest of success, or more. Your scattered fleet is joined upon the shore. The winds are changed, your friends from danger free, or I renounce my skill in augury. 12 swans behold in beauteous order move, and stoop with closing pinions from above, whom late the bird of Jove had driven along. And though the clouds pursued the scattering throng, now all united in a goodly team, they skim the ground and seek the quiet stream. As they, with joy returning, clap their wings, and ride the circuit of the skies in vain. Not otherwise your ships and every friend already hold the port, or with swift sails they set. No more advice is needed, but pursue the path before you and the time. Thus having said, she turned, and made appear her neck refulgent and dishevelled hair, which flowing from her shoulders reached the ground, and widely spread ambrosial scents around. In length of train descends her sweeping gown, and by her graceful walk the queen of love is known. The prince pursued the parting deity with words like these: Ah, whither do you fly, unkind and cruel, to deceive your son in borrowed shapes and his embrace to shun? Never to bless my sight but thus unknown, and still to speak in accents not shown. Against the goddess these complaints he made, but took the path and her commands obeyed. They march obscure, for Venus kindly shrouds with mist their pursues, and involves in clouds that, thus it seemed, their passage none might stay, or force to tell the causes of their way. This part performed, the goddess flies sublime to visit Paphos and her native clime, where garlands evergreen and fair with vows are offered and with solemn prayer. 100 altars in her temple square, 1,000 beating hearts they climb the next ascent, and looking down now at a nearer distance view the town. The prince with wonder sees the stately towers, which late were huts and shepherds' home bowers, the gates and streets, and hears from every part the noise and busy concourse of them all. The toiling Tyrians on each other call to ply the labor, some extend the wall, some build the citadel, the brawny throng, or dig or push unwieldy stones along. Some for their dwellings choose a spot of ground, which, first designed, with ditches they surround. Some laws ordain, and some attend choice of holy senates, and elect by voice. Here some design a mole, while others there lay deep foundations for a theatre. From marble quarries mighty columns hew for ornaments of scene and future view. Such is their toil, and such their busy pains, as exercise the bees in flowery play. When winter past and summer scarce begun, invites them forth to labor in the sun. Some lead their youth abroad, while some condense their liquid store, and some in cells dispense. Some at the gate stand ready to receive the golden burden, and their friends relieve. All with united force combine to drive the lazy drones from the laborious hive. With envy stung, they view each other's deeds. The fragrant work with diligence precedes. Thrice happy you, whose walls already rise, and view with lifted eyes their lofty tower. Then, entering at the gate, concealed in clouds prodigious to relate, he mixed unmarked among the busy throng, borne by the tide, and passed unseen along. Full in the center of the town there stood, thick set with trees, a venerable wood. The Tyrians landed in this holy ground, and digging here a prosperous home found. From under earth on coursers head they drew, their growth and fortune to foreshew. This fate did sign their foundress Juno gave, of a soil fruitful and a people brave. Sidonian Dido here with solemn state did Juno's temple build and consecrate, enriched with gift and with a golden shrine. But more the goddess made the place. On brazen steps the marble threshold rose, and brazen plates the cedar beams enclosed. The rafters are with brazen coverings crowned, the lofty doors on brazen hinges sound. When first Aeneas this place beheld, revived his courage and his fear expelled. For while, expecting there the queen, he raised his wondering eyes and round the temple gazed, admired the fortune of the rising town, the striving artists and their arts renowned. He saw in order painted on the wall whatever did unhappy Troy befall, the wars that fame around the world had blown, all to the life every leader known. There Agamemnon, Priam here he spies, and fierce Achilles, who both kings defies. He stopped, and weeping said, O friend, even here the monuments of Trojan woes appear. Our known disaster fill even foreign lands. See here, where old unhappy Priam stands, even the mute walls relate the warrior's fame, and Trojan griefs the Tyrians' pity. He said, his tears a ready passage find, devouring what he saw so well designed, and with an empty picture fed his mind. For there he saw the fainting Grecians yield, and here the trembling Trojans quit the field. Pursued by fierce Achilles through the plain, on his high chariot driving o'er the slain. The tents of Rhesus next his grief renewed, by their white sails betrayed to nightly view. And wakeful Diomed, whose cruel sword the sentries slew, nor spared their slumbering lord, then took the fiery steeds, ere yet the food of Troy they taste or drink the Xanthian flood. Elsewhere he saw where Troilus defied Achilles, and unequal combat tried. Then where boy disarmed with loosened reins was by his horses hurried o'er the plains, hung by the neck and hair and dragged around with hospital speared yet sticky nails, with tracks of blood inscribed the dusty ground. Meantime the Trojan dames oppressed with woe to Pallas ran in long procession, in hopes to reconcile their heavenly. They weep they beat their breasts, they rend their hair, then rich embroidered vests for presents made. But the stern goddess stands unmoved with grief. Thrice round the Trojan walls Achilles drew the corpse of Hector, in mighty sleep. Here Priam slews, and there for sums of gold the lifeless body of the son. So sad an object, and so well expressed, drew sighs and groans from the great hero's breast. To see the figure of his lifeless friend, and his old sire his helpless hand extend. Himself he saw on Grecian train, mixed in the bloody battle of it, and swarthy Memnon in his arms his pompous ensigns and his Indian crew. Penthesilea there with haughty grace leads to the wars and the zone race. In their right hands a pointed dart they wield, the left forward sustains the lunar shield. Athwart her breast a golden belt she throws, amid the press alone provokes 1,000 foes. Dares her maiden arms to manly force oppose. Thus, while the Trojan prince employs his eyes fixed on the walls with wonder and surprise, the beauteous Dido with a numerous train and pomp of guards descends the sacred fane. Such on Eurota's banks or Cynthus Diana sees, and so she charms the sight. When in the dance the graceful goddess moves, the choir nymphs and orators their names. Known by her quiver and her lofty mien, she walks majestic and she looks their queen. Latona sees her shine above the rest, and feeds with secret joy her silent breast. Such Dido was. With such becoming state amidst the crowd, she walks serenely great. Their labor to her future sway she speeds, and passing with gracious glance proceeds. Then mounts the throne I placed before the shrine. In crowds around the swarming joy. She takes petitions and dispenses laws, hears and determines every private cause. Their tasks in equal portions she divides, and where unequal, there by lot decides. Another way, by chance, Aeneas bends his eyes, and unexpected sees his friend. Antheus, Sergestus great, Cloanthus strong, and at their backs a mighty Trojan throng, whom late the tempest on the billows tossed, and widely scattered on the coast. The prince, unseen, surprised, with wonder stands, and longs with joyful haste to join their hands. But, doubtful of the wished event, he stays, and from the hollow cloud his friends surveyed. Impatient till they told their present state, and where they left their ships, and what their fate, why they came, and what was their request. For these were sent, commissioned by the rest, to sue for leave to land the signal, and gain admission to the gracious queen. Entering with cries, they filled the holy fane, and thus with low voice Ilioneus began. O Queen, indulged by favor of the gods to found an empire in these new abodes, to build a town with statutes to restrain the wild inhabitants beneath thy reign, we, wretched Trojans, tossed on every shore from sea to sea, thy clemency implore. Forbid the fires our shipping to deface, receive th' unhappy fugitives to grace, and spare the remnant of a pious race. We come not with design of wasteful prey to drive the country, force the swains away, nor such our strength, nor such is our desire. The vanquished dare not to such thoughts aspire. A land there is, Hesperia named of old, the soil is fruitful, and the men are bold. Th' only Trians held it once by common fame, now called Italia from the leader's name. To that sweet region was our voyage bent, when winds and every warring element disturbed our course, and far from sight of land cast our torn vessels on the moving sand. The sea came on, the south with mighty roar, dispersed and dashed the rest upon the rocky shore. These few you see escaped the storm, and fear unless you interpose a shipwreck here. What men, what monsters, what inhuman race, what laws, what barbarous customs of the place, shot up in a desert's shore to drown and drive us to the cruel seas again. If our hard fortune no compassion draws, nor hospitable rights, nor laws, the gods are just, and will revenge our cause. Aeneid was our prince. A juster lord or nobler warrior never drew a sword. Observant of the right, religious of his word, if yet he lives and draws this vital air, nor we, his friends, of safety shall despair. Nor you, great queen, these offices repent, which he will equal and perhaps augment. We want not cities, nor Sicilian coasts, where King Aeneas' Trojan lineage boasts. Permit our ships a shelter on your shores, refitted from your woods with planks and oars, that, if our prince be safe, we may renew our destined course and Italy pursue. But if, O best of men, the fates ordain that you art swallowed in the Libyan, and if our young Iulius be no more, dismiss our navy from your friendly shore, that we to good Ancestes may return, and with our friends our common losses mourn. Thus spoke Ilioneus, the Trojan crew, with cries and clamors his request. The modest queen awhile with downcast eyes pondered the speech, then briefly thus replied: Trojans, dismiss your fears. My cruel fate and doubts attending an incensed state force me to guard my coast from foreign foe. Who has not heard the story of your woes, the name and fortune of your native place, the fame and valor of the Phrygian race? We Tyrians are not so devoid of sense, nor so remote from Phoebus' influence. Whether to Latian shores your courses bend, or driven by tempests from you seek the good Acestes' government. Your men shall be received, your fleet repaired, and sail with ships to convoy for your god. Or would you stay and join your friendly powers to raise and to defend Tyrian towers? My wealth, my city, and myself are yours. And would to heaven the storm you felt would bring on Carthaginian coasts your wandering king. My people shall, by my command, explore the ports and creeks of every winding shore, and towns and wilds and shady woods in quest of so renowned and so desired again. Raised in his mind, the Trojan hero stood, and longed to break out from his ambient cloud. Achates found him, and thus urged his way. From whence, O goddess born, this long delay? What more can you desire? Your welcome sure, your fleet in safety, and your friends secure. One only wants, and him we saw in vain oppose the storm, and swallowed in the main. Orontes in his fate our forfeit paid. The rest agrees with what your mother said. Scarce had he spoken, and the cloud gave way. The mist flew upward and dissolved in day. The Trojan chief appeared in open sight, august in visage and circling blue. His mother goddess, with her hands divine, had formed his curling locks and made his temple shine, and given his rolling eyes a sparkling grace, and breathed a youthful vigor on his face, like polished iron, beauteous to behold, of Parian marble encased in gold. Thus radiant from the circling cloud he broke, and thus with manly modesty he spoke. He whom you seek am I, by tempest tossed and saved from shipwreck on your Libyan coast, presenting a gracious queen before your throne, a prince that owes his life to you alone. Fair majesty, the refuge and redress of those whom fate pursues and wants oppress. You who our pious officers employ to save the relics of abandoned Troy, receive the shipwrecked on your shore. Hospitable rites with the poor. Associate in your town a wandering train, and strangers in your palace entertain. What thanks can wretched fugitives return, who scattered through the world in exile mourn? The gods to goodness unmoved, if acts of mercy touch their hand. And more than all, their gods your generous heart, conscious of worth, requite its own desert. In you this age is happy, and this earth, than parents more than mortal gave you birth. While rolling rivers into seas shall run, and round the space of heaven the radiant sun, while trees the mountain tops with shade supply, your honor, name, and praise shall never die. Whate'er abode my fortune has assigned, your image shall be present in my mind. Thus having said, he turned with pious haste, and joyful his expecting friends embraced. With his right hand Ilioneus was graced, Serestus with his left, then to his breast Cloanthus thus, and the noble Gyas pressed, and so by turns descended to the rest. The Tyrian queen stood fixed upon his face, pleased with his motions, ravished with his grace, admired his fortunes, more than then recollected stood, and thus began. What fate, O goddess born, what angry powers have cast you shipwrecked on our barren shore? Are you the great Aeneas, known to fame, who from celestial sea your lineage claim? The same Aeneas whom fair Venus bore to famed Anchises on the Idaean shore? It calls unto my mind, though then a child, when Teucer came from Salamis exiled, and sought my father's aid to be restored. My father Belus then, with fire and sword, invaded Cyprus, made the region bare, and conquered, finished the successful war. From him the Trojan seas I understood, the Grecian chiefs and your illustrious blood. Your foe himself, the dark valor praised, and his own ancestry from Trojans raised. Enter, my noble guest, and you shall find, if not a costly welcome, yet a kind. I, myself, like you, have been distressed, till heaven afforded me this place of rest. Like you, an alien, in a land unknown, I learned to pity woes so like you. She said, and to the palace led her guest, then offered incense and proclaimed a feast. Nor yet less careful for her absent friend, twice 10 fat oxen to the ships he sent, besides 100 boars and 100 lambs, with bleating cries attended, and jars of generous wine in spacious bowls she gives, to cheer the sailors' drooping souls. Now purple hangings clothe the palace walls, and sumptuous feasts are made in splendid hall, on Tyrian carpets richly wrought. With loads of massy plate the sideboards shine, and antique vases all of gold embossed, the gold himself inferior to the cost. Of curious work whereon the sides were seen the fights and figures of illustrious men, from their first founder to the present queen. The good Aeneas' paternal care Iulius' absence could no longer bear, dispatched Achates to the ships in haste, to give a glad relation of the past, and, fraught with precious gifts, to bring the boy, snatched from the ruins of unhappy Troy, a robe of tissue stiff with golden wire, and up a vest once Helen's rich attire, from Argos by the famed adulteress brought, with golden flowers and winding foliage wrought. Her mother Leda's present when she came to ruin Troy and set the world on flame. The scepter Priam's eldest daughter bore, her orient necklace and the crown she wore. Of double texture, glorious to behold, one order set with gems and one with gold. Instructed this, the wise Achates goes, and in his diligence his duty showed. But Venus, anxious for her son's affairs, new counsels tries, and new designs prepares, that Cupid should assume the shape and face of sweet Ascanius, and the sprightly Grace should bring presents to the nephews, and in Eliza's veins the gentle poison shed. For much she feared the Tyrians' double tongue, and knew the town to Juno's care belonged. These thoughts by night her golden slumbers broke, and thus along to winged love she spoke. My son, my strength, whose mighty power alone controls the thunderer on his awful throne, to thee thy much afflicted mother flies, and on thy succor and thy faith relies. Thou knowest, my son, how Jove's revengeful wife by force and fraud attempts thy brother's life, and often hast thou mourned with me his pains. Him Dido now with blandishment detains, but I suspect the town where Juno reigns. For this 'tis needful to prevent her arm, and fire with love the proud Phoenicians' heart. A love so violent, so strong, so sure, as neither age can change nor art can cure. How this may be performed, now take my mind. Ascanius, by his father, is designed to come with presents laden from the port, to gratify the queen and gain the court. I mean to plunge the boy in pleasing sleep, and ravish the Italian flowers to keep on high Cythera, that the sweet deceit may pass unseen, and none prevent the cheat. Take thou his form and shape, I beg the grace, but only for a night's revolving space. Thyself a boy, assume a boy's dissembled face, that when, amidst the fervor of the feast, the Tyrian hugs and fawns thee on her breast, and with sweet kisses in her arms constrain, thou mayest infuse thy venom in her veins. The god of love obeys, and sets aside his bow and quiver, and his plumy pride. He walks Iulus in his mother's sight, and in the sweet resemblance takes him pride. The goddess then to young Ascanius flies, and in a pleasing slumber seals his eye. Lulled in her lap amidst the train of love, she gently bears him to her blissful grove. Then with a wreath of myrtle crowns his head, and softly lays him in a flowery bed. Cupid, meantime, assumed his form and fate, following Achates with a short pace, and brought the gifts. The queen already sate amid the Trojan lords in shining state. High on a golden bed, her princely guest was next her side, in order sate the rest. Then canisters with bread are heaped on high, the attendants water for their hands supply, and, having washed, with silken towels dry. Next 50 handmaids in long order bore the censers, and perfumes the gods adore. Then youths and virgins twice as many joined to place the dishes and to serve the wine. The Tyrian train admitted to the feast approach, and on the painted couches rest. All on the Trojans' gifts with wonder gazed, but viewed the beauteous boy with wonder. His rosy-colored cheeks, his radiant eyes, his motions, voice, and shape, and all the gods display. Nor pass unpraised the vest and veil divine, which wandering foliage in which flowers intertwine. Far above the rest, royal dame, already doomed to love disastrous swain, with eyes insatiate and tumultuous joy, beholds the presence and admires the boy. The guileful god about the hero long with children's play and false embraces hung. Then sought the queen. She took him to her arms with greedy pleasure and devoured his charms. Unhappy Dido, little thoughtful guest, how dire a god she knew so was. But he, not mindless of his mother's prayer, works in the pliant bosom of the fair, and molds her heart anew, and blots her former care. And dead is to the living love reason, and all Aeneas enters in. Now, when the rage of hunger was appeased, the meat removed, and every guest was pleased, the golden bowls with sparkling wine are crowned, and through the palace cheerful cries resound. From gilded roofs dependent lamps display nocturnal beams that emulate the day. A golden bowl that shone with gems divine, the queen commanded to be crowned with wine. That bowl that Belus used in all the Tyrian wine. Then silence through the hall proclaimed as she spoke. O hospitable Jove, we thus invoke with solemn rites thy sacred name and power. Bless to both nations this auspicious hour. So may the Trojan and the Tyrian line and master Concord from this day combine. Thou, Bacchus, god of joys and friendly cheer, and gracious Juno, both be present here. And you, my lords of Tyre, your vows address to heaven with mine to ratify the peace. The goblet then she took, with nectar crowned, sprinkling the first libations on the ground, and raised it to her mouth with sober grace. Then sipping, offered to the next place. 'Twas Bitias whom she called, a thirsty soul. He took the challenge and embraced the bowl. With pleasure swilled the gold, nor ceased to draw, till he the bottom of the brimmer saw. The goblet goes around. Iopus brought his golden lyre and sung when ancient Atlas taught the various labors of the wandering moon, and whence proceeds the eclipses of the sun, the original of man and beast, and whence the rain arrives and fires their warmth dispense, and fixed and erring stars dispose their influence. What shakes the earth? What cause delays the summer night and shortens winter days? With peals of shouts the Tyrians praise the sun. Those peals are echoed by the Trojans. The unhappy queen with talk prolonged, and drank large draughts of love with vast delight. Of Priam much inquired, of Hector more, then asked what arms the swine held, what troops he landed on the Trojan shore. The steeds of Diomed varied the discourse, and fierce Achilles with his matchless force. At length, as fate and her ill stars required, to hear the series of the war desired, relate at large, my godlike guest, she said, the Grecian stratagems, the town betrayed, the fatal issue of so war, your flight, your wanderings, and your roads declared. Since on every sea, on every coast, your men have been distressed, your navy toast. 7 times the sun has healed the tropic dew, the winter banished, and the spring end of the Recording by Joseph Early, Falls Church, Virginia.
You scared?
Book 2, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is the LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Aeneid by Publius Regillius Maro, translated by John Dryden. Book 2, How They Took the City, Part 1. All were attentive to the godlike man, when from his lofty couch he thus began. Great Queen, what you command me to relate renews the sad remembrance of our fate. An empire from its old foundations rent, in every woe the Trojans underwent. A peopled city made a desert place. All that I saw, and part of which I was, not even the hardest of our foes could hear, nor stern Ulysses tell without a tear. And now the latter watch of wasting night, and setting stars to kindly rest invite. But since you take such interest in our woe, and Troy's disastrous end desire to know, I will restrain my tears and briefly tell what in our last and fatal night befell. By destiny compelled and in despair, the Greeks grew weary of the tedious war, and by Minerva's aid a fabric reared, which like a steed of monstrous height appeared. The sides were planked with pine, they feigned it made for their return, and thus this vow they paid. Thus they pretend, but in the hollow side selected numbers of their soldiers hide. With inward arms the dire machines they load, and iron bowels stuff the dark abode. In sight of Troy lies Tenedos, an isle, while fortune did on Priam's empire smile. Renowned for wealth, but since a faithless bay, where ships exposed to wind and weather lay, there was their fleet concealed, we thought, for Greece. Their sails were hoisted, and our fears release. The Trojans, cooped within their walls so long, unbar their gates and issue in a throng, like swarming bees, and with delight survey the camp deserted where the Grecians lay. The quarters of the several chiefs they showed. Here Phoenix, here Achilles made abode. Here joined the battles, here the navy rode. Part on the pile their wondering eyes employ, the pile by Pallas raised to ruin Troy. Thymoetes first, 'tis as doubtful whether hired, or so the Trojan destiny required, moved that the ramparts might be broken down, to lodge the monster fabric in the town. Macapes and the rest of sounder mind, the fatal present to the flames designed, or to the watery deep, at least to bore the hollow sides, and hidden frauds explore. The giddy vulgar, as their fancies guide, with noise say nothing, and in parts divide. Laocoon, followed by a numerous crowd, ran from the fort and cried from afar aloud, "O wretched countrymen, what fury reigns? What more than madness has possessed your brains? Think you the Grecians from your coasts are gone? And are Ulysses' arts no better known? This hollow fabric either must enclose within its blind recesses our secret foes, or 'tis an engine raised above the town, to o'erlook the walls and then to batter down. Somewhat is sure designed, by fraud or force. Trust not their presence, nor admit the horse." Thus having said, against the steed he threw his forceful spear, which, hissing as flew, pierced through the yielding planks of jointed wood, and trembling in the hollow body stood. The sides transpierced returned a rattling sound, and groans of Greeks enclosed come issuing through the wound. And had not heaven the fall of Troy designed, or had not men been fated to be blind, enough was said and done to inspire a better mind. Then had our lances pierced the treacherous wood, and Ilian towers and Priam's empire stood. Meantime with shouts the Trojan shepherds bring a captive Greek in bands before the king, taken to take, who made himself their prey, to impose on their belief, and Troy betray. Fixed on his arm, and obstinately bent, to die undaunted, or to circumvent. About the captive, tides of Trojans flow, all press to see, and some insult the foe. Now hear how well the Greeks their wiles disguised. Behold a nation in a man comprised. Trembling, the miscreant stood, unarmed and bound. He starred and rolled his haggard eyes around. Then said, Alas, what earth remains? What sea is open to receive unhappy me? What fate a wretched fugitive attends, scorned by my foes, abandoned by my friends? He said, and sighed, and cast a rueful eye. Our pity kindles, and our passions die. We cheer youth to make his own defense, and freely tell us what he was, and whence. What news he could impart we long to know, and what to credit from the captive foe. His fear at length dismissed, he said, Whate'er my fate ordains, my word shall be sincere. And neither can nor dare my birth disclaim. Greece is my country, Sinon is my name. Though plunged by fortune's power in misery, 'tis not in fortune's power to make me lie. If any chance has hither brought me the name of Palamedes, not unknown to fame, who suffered from the malice of the times, accused and sentenced for pretended crimes. Because these fatal wars he would prevent, whose death the wretched Greeks too late lament. Me then a boy, my father poor and bare, of other means committed to his care, his kinsman and companion in the war. While fortune favored, while his arms support the cause, and ruled the councils of the court, I made some figure there, nor was my name obscure, nor I without my share of fame. But when Ulysses with fallacious arts had made impression in the people's hearts, and forged a treason in my patron's name, I speak of things too far divulged by fame. My kinsman fell, then I without support, in private mourned his loss, and left the court. Mad as I was, I could not bear his fate, with silent grief, but loudly blamed the state, and cursed the direful author of my woes. 'Twas told again, and hence my ruin rose. I threatened, if indulgent heaven once more would land me safely on my native shore, his death with double vengeance to restore. This moved the murderer's hate, and thus ensued the effects of malice from a man so proud. Ambiguous rumors through the camp he spread, and sought by treason my devoted head. New crimes invented, left unturned no stone, to make my guilt appear and hide his own, till Calchas was by force and threatening wrought. But why dwell I on that anxious thought? If on my nation just revenge you seek, and it is to appear a foe, to appear a Greek, already you my name and country know. Assuage your thirst of blood, and strike the blow. My death will both the kingly brothers please, and set insatious Ithacus at ease. This fair, unfinished tale, these broken starts, raised expectations in our longing hearts, unknowing as we were in Grecian arts. His former trembling once again renewed, with acted fear the villain thus pursued. Long had the Grecians, tired with fruitless care, and wearied with an unsuccessful war, resolved to raise the siege and leave the town, and had the gods permitted, they had gone. But oft the wintry seas and southern winds withstood their passage home, and changed their minds. Portents and prodigies their souls amazed, but most when this stupendous pile was raised. Then flaming meteors hung in air were seen, and thunders rattled through a sky serene. Dismayed and fearful of some dire event, Eurypylus to inquire their fate was sent. He from the gods this dreadful answer brought: O Grecians, when the Trojan shores you sought, your passage with a virgin's blood was bought. So must your safe return be bought again, and Grecian blood once more to atone the main. The spreading rumor round the people ran, all feared, and each believed himself the man. Ulysses took the advantage of their fright, called Calchas, and produced an open sight. Then bade him name the wretch ordained by fate, the public victim, to redeem the state. Already some presaged the dire event, and saw what sacrifice Ulysses meant. For twice 5 days the old seer withstood the intended treason, and was dumb to blood, till, tired with endless clamors and pursuit of Ithacus, he stood no longer mute, but, as it was agreed, pronounced that I was destined by the wrathful gods to die. All praised the sentence, pleased the storm should fall on one alone, whose fury threatened all. The dismal day was come, the priests prepare their leavened cakes and fillets for my hair. I followed nature's laws, and must avow, I broke my bonds, and fled the fatal blow. Hid in a weedy lake all night I lay, secure of safety when they sailed away. But now what further hopes for me remain, to see my friends or native soil again? My tender infants, or my careful sire, whom they returning will to death require, will perpetrate on them their first design, and take the forfeit of their heads for mine. Which I, if pity mortal minds could move, if there be faith below, or gods above, if innocence and truth can claim desert, ye Trojans from an injured wretch avert. False tears true pity move, the king commands to loose his fetters and unbind his hands. Then adds these friendly words, dismiss thy fears, forget the Greeks, be mine as thou wert theirs. But truly tell, was it for force or guile, or some religious end you raised the pile? Thus said the king. He, full of fraudful arts, this well-invented tale for truth imparts. Ye lamps of heaven, he said, and lifted high his hands now free, thou venerable sky. Inviolable powers adorned with dread, ye fatal fillets that once bound this head, ye sacred altars from whose flames I fled, be of all adjured, and grant I may, without a crime, the ungrateful Greeks betray. Reveal the secrets of the guilty state, and justly punish whom I hate. But you, O king, preserve the faith you gave, if I, to save myself, your empire save. The Grecian hopes, and all the attempts they made, were only founded on Minerva's aid. But from the time when impious Diomed, and false Ulysses, that inventive head, her fatal image from the temple drew, the sleeping guardians of the castle slew. Her virgin statue with the bloody hands polluted and profaned her holy bands. From thence the tide of fortune left their shore, and ebbed much faster than it flowed before. Their courage languished as their hopes decayed, and Pallas, now adverse, refused her aid. Nor did the goddess doubtfully declare her altered mind and alienated care. When first her fatal image touched the ground, she sternly cast her glaring eyes around, that sparkled as they rolled, and seemed to threat. Her heavenly limbs distilled a briny sweat. Thrice from the ground she leapt, and was seen to wield her brandished lance, and shake her horrid shield. Then Calchas bade our host for flight, and hoped no conquest from the tedious war. Till first they sailed for Greece, their prayers besought her injured power and better omens brought. And now their navies plows the watery main, yet soon expect it on your shores again. With Pallas pleased, as Calchas did ordain, but first to reconcile the blue-eyed maid, for her stolen statue and her tower betrayed. Warned by the steer to her offended name, we raised and dedicated this wondrous frame, so lofty, lest through your forbidden gates it passed and intercept our better fates. For once admitted there, our hopes are lost, and Troy may then a new Palladium boast. For so religion and gods ordained, that if you violate with hands profane Minerva's gift, your town in flames shall burn. Which omen, O ye gods, on Grecia turn. But if it climb with your assisting hands the Trojan walls, and in the city stands, then Troy shall Argos and Mycenae burn, and the reverse of fate on us return. With such deceits he gained their easy hearts, too prone to credit his perfidious arts. What Diomede, nor Thetis' greater son, 1,000 ships, nor 10 years' siege had done. False tears and fawning words the city won. A greater omen and of worse portent did our unwary minds with fear torment, concurring to produce the dire event. Laocoon, Neptune's priest by lot that year, with solemn pomp then sacrificed a steer. When, dreadful to behold, from the sea we spied 2 serpents, rank abreast, the seas divide, and smoothly seep along the swelling tide. Their flaming crests above the waves they show, their bellies seem to burn the seas below, their speckled tails advance to steer their course, and on the sounding shore the flying billows force. And now the strand, and now the plain they held, their ardent eyes with bloody streaks were filled, their nimble tongues they brandished as they came, and licked their hissing jaws that spluttered flame. We fled amazed, their destined way to take, and to Laocoon and to his children make. At first round the tender boys they wind, then with their sharpened fangs their limbs and bodies grind. The wretched father running to their aid, with pious haste, but vain, they next invade. Twice round his waist their winding volumes roll, and twice about his grasping throat they fold. The priest, thus doubly choked, their crests divide, and towering over his head in triumph ride. With both his hands he labors at the knots, his holy fillets the blue venom blots. His roaring fills the flitting air around. Thus, when an ox receives a glancing wound, he breaks his bands, the fatal altar flies, and with loud bellowing breaks the yielding skies. Their tasks perform'd, the serpents quit their prey, and to the tower Pallas make their way. Couch'd at her feet, they lie protected there, by her large buckler and pretended spear. Amazement seizes all, the general cry proclaims Laocoon justly doomed to die, whose hand the will of Pallas had withstood, and dared to violate the sacred wood. All vote to admit the steed, that vows be paid, and incense offered to the offended maid. A spacious breach is made, the town lies bare, some hoisting levers, some the wheels prepare, and fasten to the horses' feet the rest, with cables haul along the unwieldy beast. Each on his own fellow for assistance calls. At length the fatal fabric mounts the walls. Big with destruction, boys with chaplets crowned, and choirs of virgins sing and dance around. Thus raised aloft, and then descending down, it enters o'er our heads and threats the town. O sacred city, built by hands divine, O valiant heroes of the Trojan line! 4 times he struck, as oft the clashing sound, and arms were heard, and inward groans rebound. Yet, mad with zeal, and blinded with our fate, we haul along the horse in solemn state. Then placed the dire portent within the tower. Cassandra cried and cursed the unhappy hour. Foretold our fate, but by the god's decree, all heard, but none believed the prophecy. With branches we the fanes adorned and laced, in joviality the day ordained to be the last. Meantime, the rapid heavens rolled down the light, and on the shaded ocean rushed the night. Our men secure, nor guards nor sentries held, but easy sleep their weary limbs compelled. The Grecians had embarked their naval powers from Tenedos, and sought our well-known shores. Safe under covert of the silent night, and guided by the imperial galley's light, when Sinon, favored by the partial gods, unlocked the horse and opt his dark abodes, restored to the vital air our hidden foes, who joyful from their long confinement rose. Tysander bold, and Sthenelus their guide, and dire Ulysses down the cable slide. Then Thoas, Athamas, and Pyrrhus haste, nor was the Podalirian hero last, nor injured Menelaus, nor the famed Epeius, who the fatal engine framed. A nameless crowd succeed, their forces joined, to invade the town, oppressed with sleep and wine. Those few they find awake first meet their fate, then to their fellows they unbar their gate. 'Twas in the dead of the night, when sleep repairs, our bodies worn with toils, our mind with cares. when Hector's ghost before my sight appears. A bloody shroud he seen, and bathed in tears, such as he was when, by Pelides slain, Thessalian coursers dragged him over the plain. Swollen were his feet, as when the throngs were thrust through the bored holes, his body black with dust. Unlike that Hector who returned from toils of war triumphant in Achaean spoils, or him who made the fainting Greeks retire, and launched from their navy Phrygian fire. His hair and beard stood stiffened with his gore. All the wounds he for his country bore now streamed afresh, and with new purple ran. I wept to see the visionary man, and while my trance continued, thus began. O light of Trojans and support of Troy, thy father's champion and thy country's joy, O long expected by thy friends, from whence art thou so late returned for our defence? Do we behold thee, wearied as we are, with length of labors and with toils of war? After so many funerals of our own, art thou restored to thy declining town? But say, what wounds are these? What new disgrace deforms the manly features of thy face? To this the spectre no reply did frame, but answered to the cause for which he came, and groaning from the bottom of his breast, this warning in these mournful words expressed. O goddess born, escape by timely flight the flames and horrors of this fatal night. The foes already have possessed the wall. Troy nods from high and totters to her fall. Enough is paid to Priam's royal name, more than enough to duty and to fame. If by a mortal hand my father's throne could be defended, 'twas by mine alone. Now Troy to thee commends her future state, and gives her gods companions of thy fate. From their assistance walls expect, which wandering long, and last thou shalt erect. He said, and brought to me, from their blest abodes, the venerable statues of the gods, with ancient Vesta from the sacred choir, the wreaths and relics of the immortal fire. Now peals of shouts came thundering from afar, cries, threats, and loud laments, and mingled war. The noise approaches, though our palace stood aloof from streets, encompassed with a wood. Louder, and yet more loud, I hear the alarms of human cries distinct and clashing arms. Fear broke my slumbers, I no longer stay, but mount the terrace, thence the town survey, and hearken what the frightful sounds convey. Thus, when a flood of fire by wind is borne, crackling it rolls and mows the standing corn, or deluges descending on the plains, sweeping over the yellow year, destroy the pains of laboring oxen and peasants' gains, unroot the forest oaks and bear away flocks, folds, and trees, and undistinguished prey. The shepherd climbs the cliff and sees from afar the wasteful ravaging of the watery war. Then Hector's faith was manifestly cleared, and the Grecian frauds in open light appeared. The palace of Dave Phoebus ascends in smoky flames and catches on his friends. Ucalegon burns next. The seas are bright with splendor not their own, and shine with Trojan light. New clamors and new clangors now arise, the sound of trumpets mixed with fighting cries. With frenzy seized, I run to meet the alarms, resolved on death, resolved to die in arms. But first to gather friends, and with them to oppose, if fortune favored, and repel the foes, spurred by my courage and by my country fired, with sense of honor and revenge inspired. Pantheus, Apollo's priest, a sacred name, had scaped the Grecian swords and passed the flame. With relics loaded, to my doors he fled, and by the hand of his tender grandson led. What hope, O Pantheus? Whither can we run? Where make a stand? And what yet may be done? Scarce, said I, when Pantheus with a groan, Troy is no more, and Ilium was a town. The fatal day, the appointed hour is come, when wrathful Jove's irrevocable doom transfers the Trojan state to Grecian hands. The fire consumes the town, the foe commands, and armed hosts, an unexpected force, break from the bows of the fatal horse. Within the gates, proud Sinon throws about The flames and foes for entrance press without, with 1,000 others, whom I fear to name. More than from Argos or Mycenae came. To several posts their parties they divide. Some block the narrow streets, some scour the wide. The bold they kill, the unwary they surprise. Who fights finds death, and death finds him who flies. The warders of the gate but scarce maintain the unequal combat, and resist in vain. I heard, and heaven that well-born soul inspires, prompts me through lifted swords and rising fires, to run where clashing arms and clamor calls, and rush undaunted to defend the walls. Ripheus and Iphitus by my side engage, for valor one renowned, and one for age. Dymas and Hypanis by moonlight knew my motions and my mien, and to my party drew. With young Corybus, who by love was led to win renown in fair Cassandra's bed, and lately brought his troops to Priam's aid, forewarned in vain by the prophetic maid, whom when I saw resolved in arms to fall, and that one spirit animated all. Brave souls, said I, but brave alas in vain. Come, finish what our cruel fates ordain. You see the desperate state of our affairs, and heaven's protecting powers are deaf to prayers. The passive gods, behold, the Greeks defile their temples, and abandon to the spoil their own abodes. We, feeble few, conspire to save a sinking town involved in fire. Then let us fall, but fall amidst our foes. Despair of life the means of living shows. So bold a speech encouraged their desire of death, and added fuel to their fire. As hungry wolves with raging appetite scour through the fields, nor fear the stormy night, their whelps at home expect the promised food, and long to temper their dry chaps in blood. So rushed we forth at once, resolved to die, resolved in death the last extremes to try. We leave the narrow lanes behind, and dare the unequal combat in the public square. Night was our friend, our leader was despair. What tongue can tell the slaughter of that night? What eyes can weep the sorrows and affright? An ancient and imperial city falls. The streets are filled with frequent funerals. Houses and holy temples float in blood, and hostile nations make a common flood. Not only Trojans fall, but, in their turn, the vanquished triumph, and the victors mourn. Ours take courage from despair and night. Confused the fortune is, confused the fight. All parts resound with tumults, plaints, and fears, and grisly death in sundry shapes appears. Androgeos fell among us with his band, who thought us Grecians newly come to land. From whence, said he, my friends, this long delay? You loiter, while the spoils are borne away. Our ships are laden with the Trojan store, and you, like truants, come too late ashore. He said, but soon corrected his mistake, found by the doubtful answers which we make. Amazed, he would have shunned the unequal fight, but we, more numerous, intercepted his flight. As when some peasant in a bushy brake, as with unwary footing pressed a snake, he starts aside, astonished when he spies his rising crest, blue neck, and rolling eyes. So from our arms surprised Androgeos flies. In vain, for him and his we compassed round, possessed with fear, unknowing of the ground, and of their lives an easy conquest found. Thus fortune on our first endeavours smiled. Corybus then with youthful hopes beguiled, swollen with success and a daring mind, this new invention fatally designed. My friends, said he, since fortune shows the way, 'tis fit that we should the auspicious guide obey. For what has she, these Grecian arms bestowed, but their destruction and the Trojans' good? Then change we shields and their devices bear, let fraud supply the want of force in war. They find us arms, this said, himself he dressed in dead Androgeos' spoils, his upper vest, his painted buckler, and his plumy crest. Thus Ripheus, Dymas, all the Trojan train, lay down their own attire, and strip the slain. Mixed with the Greeks, we go with ill presage, flattered with hopes to glut our greedy rage. Unknown, assaulting whom we blindly met, and strew with Grecian carcasses the street. Thus while their straggling parties we defeat, some to the shore and safer ships retreat, and some, oppressed with more ignoble fear, remount the hollow horse and pant in secret there. But ah, what use of valor can be made when heaven's propitious powers refuse their aid? Behold the royal prophetess, the fair Cassandra, dragged by her disheveled hair, whom not Minerva's shrine nor sacred bands in safety could protect from sacrilegious hands. On heaven she cast her eyes, she sighed, she cried. 'Twas all she could, her tender arms were tied. So sad a sight Coroebus could not bear, but fired with rage, distracted with despair. Amid the barbarous ravagers he flew. Our leader's rash example we pursue. With storms of stones from the proud temple's height pour down, and on our battered helms alight. We from our friends received this fatal blow, who thought us Grecians as we seemed in show. They aimed at the mistaken crests from high, and ours beneath the ponderous ruins lie. Then, moved with anger and disdain to see their troops dispersed, the royal virgins free, the Grecians rally, and their powers unite, with fury charge us and renew the fight. The brother kings with Ajax join their force, and the whole squadron the Salian horse. End of Book 2, Part 1.
Still.
Book 2, Part 2 of the Aeneid. This is the LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Aeneid by Publius Virgilius Maro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 2, How They Took the City, Part 2. Thus when the rival winds their quarrel try, contending for the kingdom of the sky, south, east, and west on airy coursers borne, the whirlwind gathers, and the woods are torn. Then Nereus strikes the deep, the billows rise, and mixed with ooze and sand pollute the skies. And troops we squandered first again appear from several quarters and enclose the rear. They first observe, and to the rest betray, our different speech and our borrowed arms survey. Oppressed with odds we fall, Coroebus first, at Pallas' altar by Peneleus pierced. Then Ripheus followed in the unequal fight, just of his word, observant of the right. Heaven thought not so. Dymas their fate attends, with Hypanis mistaken by their friends. Nor Pantheus, thee thy mitre, nor the bands of awful Phoebus saved from impious hands. Ye Trojan flames, your testimony bear, what I performed and what I suffered there. No sword avoiding in the fateful strife, exposed to death and prodigal of life. Witness, ye heavens, I live not by my fault. I strove to have deserved the death I sought. But when I could not fight and would have died, borne off to distance by the growing tide, old Iphitus and I were hurried thence, with Peleus wounded and without defence. New clamors from the invested palace ring. We run to die or disengage the king. So hot the assault, so high the tumult rose, while ours defend and while the Greeks oppose. as all that Dardan and Argolic race had been contracted in that narrow space, or as Ilium else were void of fear, and tumult, war, and slaughter only there. Their targets in a tortoise cast, the foes, securely advancing to the turrets rose. Some mount the scaling ladders, some, more bold, swerve upwards, and by posts and pillars hold. Their left hand gripes their bucklers in the ascent, and with their right they seize the battlement. From their demolished towers the Trojans throw huge heaps of stones that, falling, crush the foe, and heavy beams and rafters from the sides. Such arms their last necessity provides, and gilded roofs come tumbling from on high, the marks of state and of ancient royalty. The guards below, fixed in the past, attend the charge undaunted and the gate defend. Renewed in courage and with recovered breath, a second time we ran to tempt our death. To clear the palace from the foe, succeed the weary living, and revenge the dead. A postern door, yet unobserved and free, joined by the length of a blind gallery, to the king's closet led, a way well known to Hector's wife, while Priam held the throne, through which she brought Astyanax unseen, to cheer his grandsire and his grandsire's queen. Through this we pass, and mount the tower from whence, with unavailing arms, the Trojans make defense. From this the trembling king had oft descried the Grecian camp, and saw their navy ride. Beams from its lofty height with swords we hew, then, wrenching with our hands, the assault renew. And, where the rafters on the columns meet, we push them headlong with our arms and feet. The lightning flies not swifter than the fall, nor thunder louder than the ruined wall. Down goes the top at once, the Greeks beneath are piecemeal torn or pounded into death. Yet more succeed, and more to death are sent. We cease not from above, nor they below relent. Before the gate stood Pyrrhus, threatening loud, with glittering arms, conspicuous in the crowd. So shines, renewed in youth, the crested snake, who slept the winter in a thorny brake, and, casting off his slough when spring returns, now looks aloft, and with new glory burns. Restored with poisonous herbs, his ardent sides reflect the sun, and raised on spires he rides. High o'er the grass, hissing he whirls along, and brandishes by fits his forky tongue. Proud Periphas and fierce Automedon, his father's charioteer, together run. To force the gate, the Squarian infantry rushed in on crowds, and the barred passage free. Entering the court with shouts, the skies they rend, and flaming firebrands to the roofs ascend. Himself among the foremost feels the blows, and with his axe repeated strokes bestows. On the strong doors then all their shoulders ply, till from the posts the brazen hinges fly. He hews apace, the double bars at length yield to his axe and unresisted strength. A mighty breach is made, the rooms concealed appear, and all the palace is revealed, the halls of audience and of public state, and where the lonely queen in secret sate. Armed soldiers now by trembling maids are seen, with not a door and scarce a space between. The house is filled with loud laments and cries, and shrieks of women rend the vaulted skies. The fearful matrons run from place to place, and kiss the thresholds and the posts embrace. The fatal work inhuman Pyrrhus plies, and all his father sparkles in his eyes. Nor bars, nor fighting guards his force sustain. The bars are broken, and the guards are slain. In rush the Greeks, and all the apartments fill. Those few defendants whom they find, they kill. Not with so fierce a rage the foaming flood roars when he finds his rapid course withstood, bears down the dams with unresisted sway, and sweeps the cattle and the cots away. These eyes beheld him when he marched between the brother kings. I saw the unhappy queen, the 100 wives, and where old Priam stood to stain his hallow altar with his brood. The 50 nuptial beds, such hopes had he, so large a promise of a progeny. The posts of plated gold and hung with spoils, fell the reward of the proud victor's toils. Wherever the raging fire had left a space, the Grecians enter and possess the place. Perhaps you may of Priam's fate inquire. He, when he saw his regal town on fire, his ruined palace, and his entering foes, on every side inevitable woes. In arms, disused, invest his limbs decayed, like them with age, a late and useless aid. His feeble shoulders scarce the weight sustain. Loaded, not armed, he creeps along with pain, despairing of success, ambitious to be slain. Uncovered, but by heaven there stood in view an altar near the hearth a laurel grew. Dotted with age, whose bough encompassed round the household gods, and shade the holy ground. Here Hecuba, with her helpless train of dames, for shelter sought, but sought in vain. Driven like a flock of doves along the sky, their images they hug, and to their altars fly. The queen, when she beheld her trembling lord, and hanging by his side a heavy sword, "What rage," she cried, "has seized my husband's mind? What arms are these, and to what use designed? These times want other aids. Were Hector here, even Hector now in vain, like Priam would appear. With us one common shelter thou shalt find, or in one common fate with us be joined." She said, and with a last salute embraced the poor old man, and by the laurel placed. Behold, Polites, one of Priam's sons, pursued by Pyrrhus, there for safety runs. Thro' swords and foes, amazed and hurt he flies, thro' empty courts and open galleries. Him Pyrrhus, urging with his lance, pursues, and often reaches, and his thrusts renews. The youth, transfixed with lamentable cries, expires before his wretched parents' eyes, whom, gasping at his feet, when Priam saw, the fear of death gave place to nature's law. And shaking more with anger than with age, "The gods," said he, "requite thy brutal rage, as sure they will, barbarian, sure they must, if there be gods in heaven, and gods be just. Who takest in wrongs an insolent delight, with a son's death to infect a father's sight? Nor he whom thou in lying fame conspire to call thee his, not he thy vaunted sire. Thy used my wretched age, the gods he feared, the laws of nature and of nations heard. He cheered my sorrows, and for sums of gold the bloody carcass of my Hector sold, pitied the woes a parent underwent, and sent me back in safety from his tent." This said, his feeble hand a javelin threw, which, fluttering, seemed to loiter as it flew. Just, and but barely, to a mark it held, and faintly tinkled on the brazen shield. Then Pyrrhus said, "Go thou from me to fate, and to my father my foul deeds relate. Now die!" And with that he dragged the trembling sire, slithering thro' the clotted blood and holy mire. The mingled paste his murdered son had made, hauled from beneath the violated shade, and on the sacred pile the royal victim laid. His right hand held his bloody falchion bare, his left he twisted in his hoary hair. Then, with a speeding thrust, his heart he found. The lukewarm blood came rushing through the wound. The sanguine streams disdained the sacred ground. Thus Priam fell, and shared one common fate, and with Troy in ashes, and his ruined state. He, who the scepter of all Asia swayed, whom monarchs like domestic slaves obeyed. On the bleak shore now lies the abandoned king, a headless carcass, and a nameless thing. Then, not before, I felt my curdled blood congeal with fear, my hair with horror stood. My father's image filled my pious mind, lest equal years might equal fortune find. Again I thought of my forsaken wife, and trembled for my son's abandoned life. I looked about, but found myself alone. Deserted at my need, my friends were gone. Some spent with toil, some with despair oppressed, leaped headlong from the heights, the flames consumed the rest. Thus, wandering in my way, without a guide, the graceless Helen in the porch I spied. Of Vesta's temple, there she lurked alone. Muffled she sate, and what she could, unknown. But by the flames that cast their blaze around, that common bane of Greece and Troy I found. For Ilium burns, she dreads the Trojan sword, more dreads the vengeance of her injured lord. Even by those gods who refuged her aboard, trembled with rage the strumpet I regard, resolved to give her guilt the due reward. Shall she triumphant sail before the wind, and leave in flames unhappy Troy behind? Shall she her kingdom and her friends review, in state attended with a captive crew, while unrevenged the good old Priam falls, and Grecian fires consume the Trojan walls. For this the Phrygian fields and Xanthian flood were swelled with bodies and were drunk with blood. 'Tis as true a soldier can small honor gain, and boast no conquest from a woman slain. Yet shall the fact not pass without applause, a vengeance taken in so just a cause. The punished crime shall set my soul at ease, the murmuring manes of my friends appease. Thus while I rave, a gleam of pleasing light spread over the palace, and shining heavenly bright, my mother stood revealed before my sight. Never so radiant did her eyes appear, not her own star confessed a light so clear. Great in her charms, as, when on gods above, she looks and breathes herself into their love. She held my hand, the destined blow to break, then from her rosy lips began to speak. My son, from whence this madness, this neglect of my commands and those whom I protect? Why this unmanly rage? Recall to mind, whom you forsake, what pledges leave behind. Look if your helpless father yet survive, or if Ascanius or Creusa live. Around your house the greedy Grecians err, and these had perished in the nightly war, but in my presence and protecting care. Not Helen's face nor Paris was in fault, but by the gods was this destruction brought. Now cast thy eyes around, while I dissolve the mists and films that mortal eyes involve. Purge from your sight the dross, and make you see the shape of every avenging deity. Enlightened thus, my just commands fulfill, nor fear obedience to thy mother's will. Where yon disordered heap of ruin lies, stones rent from stones, where clouds of dust arise. Amid that smother Neptune holds his place, below the wall's foundation drives his mace, and heaves the building from the solid base. Look where, in arms, imperial Juno stands, full in the Scaean gate, with loud commands, urging on shore the tardy Grecian bands. See, see, Pallas on her snakely buckler proud, bestrides the tower, refulgent through the crowd. See, Jove new courage to the foe supplies, and arms against the town the partial deities. Haste hence, my son, this fruitless labor end. Haste, where your troubling spouse and sire attend. Haste, and a mother's care your passage shall befriend. She said, and swiftly vanished from my sight, obscured in clouds and gloomy shades of night. I looked, I listened, dreadful sounds I hear, and the dire forms of hostile gods appear. Troy, sunk in flames I saw, nor could prevent, and Ilium from its old foundations rent like a mountain ash, which dared the winds, and stood the sturdy strokes of laboring hinds. About the roots the cruel axe resounds, and stumps are pierced with oft-repeated wounds. The war is spelt on high, the nodding crown now threats a fall, and throws the leafy honors down. To their united force it yields, though late, and mourns with immortal groans the approaching fate. The roots no more their upper load sustain, but down she falls and spreads a ruin through the plain. Descending thence, I scrape through foes and fire. Before the goddess, foes and flames retire. Arrived at home, he, for whose only sake, or most for his, such toils I undertake. The good Anchises, whom, by timely flight, I proposed to secure on Ida's height, refused the journey, resolute to die, and added his funerals to the fate of Troy. Rather than exile and old age sustain, go you, whose blood runs warm in every vein. Had heaven decreed that I should life enjoy, heaven had decreed to save unhappy Troy. 'Tis sure enough, if not too much for one, twice to have seen our Ilium overthrown. Make haste to save the poor remaining crew, and give this useless corpse a long adieu. These weak old hands suffice to stop my breath, at least pitying the foes will aid my death. To take my spoils and leave my body bare, as for my sepulchre, let heaven take care. 'Tis long since I, for my celestial wife, loathed by the gods, had dragged a lingering life. Since every hour and moment I expire, blasted from heaven by Jove's avenging fire. This oft repeated, he stood fixed to die. Myself, my wife, my son, my family, entreat pray, beg, and raise a doleful cry. What? Will he still persist on death resolve, and in his ruin all his house involve? He still persists his reason to maintain. Our prayers, our tears, our loud laments are vain. Urged by despair, again I go to try the fate of arms, resolved in fight to die. What hope remains, but what my death must give? Can I, without so dear a father, live? You term it prudence, what I baseness call. Could such a word from such a parent fall? If fortune please, and so the gods ordain, that nothing should of ruin'd Troy remain, and you conspire with fortune to be slain, the way to death is wide, the approach is near, for soon relentless Pyrrhus will appear, reeking with Priam's blood, the wretch who slew the son inhuman in the father's view. And then the sire himself to the dire altar drew. O goddess mother, give me back to fate. Your gift was undesired and came too late. Did you, for this, unhappy me convey through foes and fires to see my house a prey? Shall I my father, wife, and son behold, weltering in blood, each other's arms enfold? Haste, girt my sword, though spent and overcome. 'Tis the last summons to receive our doom. I hear thee, fate, and I obey thy call. Not unrevenged the foe shall see my fall. Restore me the yet unfinished fight. My death is wanting to conclude the night. Armed once again, my glittering sword I wield, while the other hand sustains my weighty shield. And forth I rushed to seek the abandoned field. I went, but sad Creusa stopped my way, and crossed the threshold in my passage lay, embraced my knees, and when I would have gone, showed me my feeble sire and tender son. If death be your design at least, said she, take us along to share your destiny. If any farther hopes in arms remain, this place, these pledges of your love maintain. To whom do you expose your father's life? Your son's and mine, your now forgotten wife. While thus she fills the house with clamoring cries, our hearing is diverted by our eyes. For while I held my son in the short space betwixt our kisses and our last embrace, strange to relate, from young Ulysses' head a lambent flame arose, which gently spread around his brows and on his temples fed. Amazed, with running water we prepare to quench the sacred fire and slake his hair. But old Anchises, versed in omens, reared his hands to heaven, and this request preferred. If any vows almighty Jove can bend, thy will, if piety can prayers commend, confirm the glad presage which thou art pleased to send. Scarce had he said, when on our left we hear a peal of rattling thunder roll in air. There shot a streaming lamp across the sky, which on the winged lightning seemed to fly. From o'er the roof the blaze began to move, and trailing vanished in the Idaean grove. It swept a path in heaven, and shone a guide, then in a streaming stench of sulphur died. The good old man with suppliant hands implored the gods' protection, and their star adored. Now, now, said he, my son, no more delay. I yield, I follow where heaven shows the way. Keep, O my country gods, our dwelling place, and guard this relic of the Trojan race, this tender child. These omens are your own, and you can yet restore the ruined town. At least accomplish what your signs foreshow. I stand resigned, and am prepared to go. He said, the crackling fires appear on high, and driving sparkles dance along the sky. With Vulcan's rage the rising winds conspire, and near our palace roll the flood of fire. Haste, my dear father, 'tis no time to wait, and load my shoulders with a willing freight. Whatever befalls, your life shall be my care. One death or one deliverance we will share. My hand shall lead our little son, and you, my faithful consort, shall our steps pursue. Next, you, my servants, heed my strict commands. Without the walls a ruined temple stands. To Ceres, hallowed once, a cypress nigh shoots up her venerable head on high. By long religion kept, there bend thy feet, and in divided parties let us meet. Our country gods, the relics and the bands, hold you, my father, in your guiltless hands. In me, 'Tis impious holy things to bear, red as I am with slaughter, new from war, till in some living stream I cleanse the guilt of dire debate and blood and battle spilt. Thus ordering all that prudence could provide, I clothe my shoulders with a lion's hide and yellow spoils, then on my bending back the welcome load of my father take. When on my better hand Ascanius hung, and with unequal paces tripped along, Creusa kept behind, by choice we stray, through every dark and every devious way. I, who so bold and dauntless just before, the Grecian darts and shocks of lances bore, at every shadow now am seized with fear, not for myself, but for the charges I bear, till near the ruined gate arrived at last, secure in deeming all the danger past. A frightful noise of trampling feet we hear. My father, looking through the shades with fear, cried out, Haste, haste, my son, the foes are nigh, their swords and shining armor I descry. Some hostile god for some unknown offense had sure bereft my mind of better sense. For, while through winding ways I took my flight, and sought the shelter of the gloomy night, alas, I lost Creusa, hard to tell if by her fatal destiny she fell, or wearisomely, or wandering with affright, but she was lost forever to my sight. I knew not, nor reflected till I meet my friends at Ceres, now deserted seat. We met, no one was wanting, only she received her friends, her son, and wretched me. What mad expressions then my tongue refused? Whom did I not of gods and men accuse? This was the fatal blow that pained me more than all I felt from ruined Troy before. Stung with my loss and raving with despair, abandoning my now forgotten care, of counsel, comfort, and of hope bereft, my sire, my son, my country gods I left. In shining armor once again I sheathe my limbs, not feeling wounds, nor fearing death. Then headlong to the burning walls I run, and seek the danger I was forced to shun. I tread my former tracks, through the night explore, every passage, every street I crossed before. All things were full of horror and affright, and dreadful even the silence of the night. Then to my father's house I make repair, with some small glimpses of hope to find her there. Instead of her, the cruel Greeks I met. The house was filled with foes, with flames beset. Driven on the wings of winds, whole sheets of fire through air transported to the roofs aspire. From whence to Priam's palace I resort, and search the citadel and desert court. Then unobserved I passed by Juno's church. The guard of Grecians had possessed the porch. There Phoenix and Ulysses watched prey, and thither all the wealth of Troy convey, the spoils which they from ransacked houses brought, and golden bowls from burning altars caught, the tables of the gods, the purple vests, the people's treasure, and the pomp of priests, a rank of wretched youths with pinioned hands, and captive matrons in long order stands. Then with ungoverned madness I proclaim through all the silent street Creusa's name. Creusa still I call, at length she hears, and sudden thro' the shades of night appears no more Creusa, nor my wife, but a pale spectre larger than the life. Aghast, astonished, and struck dumb with fear, I stood, like bristles rose my stiffened hair. Then thus the ghost began to soothe my grief, nor tears nor cries can give the dead relief. Desist, my much-loved lord, to indulge your pain, you bear no more than what the gods ordain. My fates permit me not from hence to fly, nor he, the great controller of the sky. Long wandering ways for you the powers decree, on land hard labours and a length of sea. Then, after many painful years are past, on Latium's happy shore you shall be cast, where gentle Tiber from his bed beholds the flowery meadows and the feeding folds. There end your toils, and there your fates provide a quiet kingdom and a royal bride. There fortune shall the Trojan line restore, and for you, lost Creusa, weep no more. Fear not that I shall watch with servile shame the imperious looks of some proud Grecian dame, or, stooping to the victor's lust, disgrace my goddess mother or my royal race. And now farewell, the parent of the gods, restrains my fleeting soul in her abodes. I trust our common issue to your care," she said, and gliding past, unseen in air. I strove to speak, but horror tied my tongue, And thrice about her neck my arms I flung, And thrice deceiv'd my vain embraces hung. Light as an empty dream at break of day, Or as a blast of wind, she rush'd away. Thus having pass'd the night in fruitless pain, I to my longing friends return again, amaz'd the augmented numbers to behold, Of men and matrons mix'd, of young and old, With arms appointed, and with treasure fraught, Resolv'd and willing under my command, To run all the hazards both of sea and land. The morn began from Ida to display Her rosy cheeks, and Phosphor led the day. Before the gates the Grecians took their post, And all pretence of late relief was lost. I yield to fate, unwillingly retire, And, loaded, up the hill convey my sire. End of Book 2.
Book 3, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. The Aeneid by Publius Vergilius Varro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 3, Sea Wanderings and Strange Meetings. Part 1. When heaven had overturned the Trojan state, And Priam's throne by too severe a fate, When ruined Troy became the Grecians' prey, And Ilium's lofty towers in ashes lay, Warned by celestial omens we retreat, To seek in foreign lands a happier seat. Near old Antandros and at Ida's foot, The timber for the sacred groves we cut, And build our fleet, uncertain yet to find What place the gods for our repose assign. Friends daily flock, and scarce the kindly spring Began to clothe the ground, and birds to sing. When old Anchises summoned all to see, The crew, my father, and the fates obey. With sighs and tears I leave my native shore, And empty fields where Ilium stood before. My sire, my son, our less and greater gods, All sail at once, and cleave the briny floods. Against our coast appears a spacious land, Which once the fierce Patroclus did command. Thracia the name, the people bold in war, Vast are their fields, and tillage is their care. A hospitable realm, while fate was kind, With Trojan friendship and religion join'd. I land, with luckless omens then adore Their gods, and draw a line along the shore. I lay the deep foundations of a wall, And Aenos, named from me, the city call. To Dionian Venus vows are paid, And all the powers that rising labours aid. A bull on Jove's imperial altar lay. Not far a rising hillock stood in view, Sharp myrtles on the sides, and cornels grew. There, while I went to crop the sylvan scenes, And shade our altar with their leafy greens, I pull'd a plant, with horror I relate, A prodigy so strange and full of faith. The rooted fibres rose, and from the wound Black bloody drops distill'd upon the ground. Mute and amazed my hair with terror stood, Fear shrunk my sinews, and congeal'd my blood. Mann'd once again, another plant I tried, That other gush'd with the same sanguine dye. Then, fearing guilt for some offence unknown, With prayers and vows the Dryads I atone. With all the sisters of the woods, and most The god of arms who rules the Thracian coast, That they or he these omens would avert, release our fears, and better signs impart. Cleared as I thought, and fully fixed at length, to learn the cause, I tugged with all my strength. I bent my knees against the ground once more. The violated myrtle ran with gore. Scarce dare I tell the sequel from the womb of wounded earth and caverns of the tomb. A groan as of a troubled ghost renewed my fright, and then these dreadful words ensued. Why dost thou thus my buried body rend? O spare the corpse of thy unhappy friend! Spare to pollute thy pious hands with blood, the tears distilled not from the wounded wood. But every drop this living tree contains is kindred blood and ran in Trojan veins. O fly from this unhospitable shore, warned by my fate, for I am Polydore. Here loads her lances in my blood embrued, again shot upward by my blood renewed. My faltering tongue and shivering limbs declare my horror, and in bristles rose my hair. When Troy with Grecian arms was closely pent, old Priam, fearful of the war's event, this hapless Polydore to Thracia sent. Loaded with gold he sent his darling far, from noisome tumults and destructive war, committed to the faithless tyrant's care, who, when he saw the power of Troy decline, forsook the weaker with the strong to join, broke every bond of nature and of truth, and murdered for his wealth the royal youth. O sacred hunger of pernicious gold, what bands of faith can impious lucre hold? Now, when my soul had shaken off her fears, I call my father and the Trojan peers. Relate the prodigies of heaven require, what he commands and their advice desire. All vote to leave that execrable shore, polluted with the blood of Polydore. But ere we sail, his funeral rites prepare, then to his ghost a tomb and altars rear. In mournful pomp the matrons walked around, with baleful cypress and blue fillets crowned. With eyes dejected and with hair unbound, the bowls of tepid milk and blood we pour, and thrice invoke the soul of Polydore. Now, when the raging storms no longer reign, but southern gales invite us to the main, we launch our vessels with a prosperous wind, and leave the cities and the shores behind. An island in the Aegean main appears, Neptune and the wat'ry Doris claim it theirs. It floated once till Phoebus fix'd the sides to rooted earth, and now it braves the tides. Here borne by friendly winds we come ashore, with needful ease our weary limbs restore, and the sun's temple and his town adore. Anius, the priest and king, with laurel crown'd, his hoary locks with purple fillets bound, who saw my sire the Delian shore ascend, came forth with eager haste to meet his friend. Invites him to his palace, and in sign of ancient love their plighted hands they join. Then to the temple of the god I went, and thus before the shrine my vows present. Give, O Tymbrius, give a resting place to the sad relics of the Trojan race, a seat secure, a region of their own, a lasting empire, and a happier town. Where shall we fix? Where shall our labours end? Whom shall we follow, and what fate attend? Let not my prayers doubtful answer find, but in clear auguries unveil thy mind. Scarce had I said, he shook the holy ground, the laurels and the lofty hills around, and from the tripos rush'd a bellowing sound. Prostrate we fell, confess'd the present God, who gave this answer from his dark abode. Undaunted youth, go seek that mother earth, from which your ancestors deriv'd their birth. The soil that sent you forth, her ancient race, in her old bosom shall again embrace. Through the wide world the Aenean house shall reign, and children's children shall the crown sustain. Thus Phoebus did our future fates disclose. A mighty tumult mix'd with joy arose. All are concern'd to know what place the god assign'd, and where determined our abode. My father, long revolving in his mind the race and lineage of the Trojan kind, thus answer'd their demands: "Ye princes, hear your pleasing fortune, and dispel your fear. The fruitful isle of Crete, well known to fame, sacred of old to Jove's imperial name, in the mid-ocean lies with large command, and on its plains 100 cities stand. Another Ida rises there, and we from thence derive our Trojan ancestry. From thence, as is divulged by certain fame, to the Rhoetean shores old Teucrus came. There fix'd, and there the seat of empire chose, ere Ilium and the Trojan towers arose. In humble vales they built their soft abodes, till Cybele, the mother of the gods, with tinkling cymbals charm'd the Idaean woods, the secret rites and ceremonies taught, and to the yoke the savage lions brought. Let us the land which heav'n appoints explore, appease the winds, and seek the Gnossian shore. If Jove assist the passage of our fleet, the third propitious dawn discovers Crete." Thus having said, the sacrifices laid on smoking altars to the gods he paid. A bull to Neptune an oblation due, another bull to bright Apollo slew, a milk-white eagle the western winds to please, and one coal-black to calm the stormy seas. Ere this a flying rumour had been spread, that fierce Idomeneus from Crete was fled, expelled and exiled, that the coast was free from foreign or domestic enemy. We leave the Delian ports, and put to sea, by Naxos famed for vintage make our way, then green Donusa pass, and sail in sight of Paros isle with marble quarries white. We pass the scattered isles of Cyclades, that scarce distinguished seem to stud the seas. The shouts of sailors double near the shores, they stretch their canvas, and they ply their oars. All hands aloft, for Crete they cry, and swiftly through the foamy billows fly. Full on the promised land at length we bore, with joy descending on the Cretan shore. With eager haste a rising town I frame, which from the Trojan Pergamus I name. The name itself was grateful, I exhort, to found their houses and erect a fort. Our ships are haul'd upon the yellow strand, the youth begin to till the labour'd land. And I myself new marriages promote, give laws and dwellings I divide by lot. When rising vapours choke the wholesome air, and blasts of noisome winds corrupt the air, the trees devouring caterpillars burn. Parch'd was the grass, and blighted was the corn. Nor 'scaped the beasts, for Sirius from on high with pestilential heat infects the sky. My men, some fall, the rest in fevers fry. Again my father bids me seek the shore of sacred Delos, and the god implore, to learn what end of woes we might expect, and to what clime our weary course direct. 'Twas night, when every creature void of cares the common gift of balmy slumber shares. The statues of my gods, for such they seem, those gods whom I from flaming Troy redeemed, before me stood majestically bright, full in the beams of Phoebus' entering light. Then thus they spoke, and eased my troubled mind. What from the Delian god thou goest to find, he tells thee here, and sends us to relate. Those powers are we, companions of thy fate, who from the burning town by thee were brought. Thy fortune follow, and thy safety wrought. Through seas and lands, as we thy steps attend, so shall our care thy glorious race befriend. An ample realm for thee thy fates ordain, a town that o'er the conquered world shall reign. Thou mighty walls for mighty nations build, nor let thy weary mind to labours yield. But change thy seat, for not the Delian god, nor we have given thee Crete for our abode. A land there is, Hesperia called of old, the soil is fruitful, and the natives bold. The Oenotrans held it once, by later fame, now called Italia from the leader's name. Lasius there and Dardanus were born. From thence we came, and thither must return. Rise, and thy sire with these glad tidings greet. Search Italy, for Jove denies thee Crete. Astonished at their voices and their sight, nor were they dreams, but visions of the night. I knew their faces, and described in perfect view their hair with fillets tied. I started from my couch, a clammy sweat on all my limbs and shivering body safe. To heaven I lift my hands with pious haste, and sacred incense in the flames I cast. Thus to the gods their perfect honours done, more cheerful to my good old sire I run, and tell the pleasing news. In little space he found his error of the double race. Not as before he deemed, derived from Crete, no more deluded by the doubtful sea. Then said, O son, turmoiled in Trojan fate, such things as these Cassandra did relate. This day revives within my mind what she foretold of Troy renewed in Italy, the Latian lands. But who could then have thought that Phrygian gods to Latium should be brought? Or who believed what mad Cassandra taught? Now let us go where Phoebus leads the way. He said, and we with glad consent obeyed. Forsake the seat, and leaving few behind, we spread our sails before the willing wind. Now from the sight of land our galleys move, with only seas around and skies above. When over our heads descends a burst of rain, and night with sable clouds involves the main. The ruffling winds the foamy billows raise, the scattered fleet is forced to several ways. The face of heaven is ravished from our eyes, and in redoubled peals the roaring thunder flies. Cast from our course, we wander in the dark, no stars to guide, no point of land to mark. Even Palinurus no distinction found, betwixt the night and day such darkness reigned around. 3 starless nights the doubtful navy strays, without distinction, and 3 sunless days. The 4th renews the light, and from our shrouds we view a rising land like distant clouds. The mountain tops confirm the pleasing sight, and curling smoke ascending from their height. The canvas falls, their oars the sailors ply, from the rude strokes the whirling waters fly. At length I land upon the Strophades, safe from the dangers of the stormy seas. Those isles are compassed by the Ionian main, a dire abode where the foul Harpies reign, forced by the winged warriors to repair to their old homes and leave their costly fare. Monsters more fierce offended heaven never sent from hell's abyss for human punishment, with virgin faces, but with wounds obscene, foul paunches, and with odour still unclean, with claws for hands and looks for ever lean. We landed at the port and soon beheld fat herds of oxen graze the flowery field, and wanton goats without a keeper stray. With weapons we the welcome prey invade, then call the gods for partners of our feast, and Jove himself the chief invited guest. We spread the tables on the greensward ground, we fed with hunger and the bowls go round, when from the mountain tops with hideous cry and clattering wings the hungry harpies fly. They snatch the meat, defiling all they find, and parting leave a loathsome stench behind. Close by a hollow rock again we sit. New dress the dinner, and the beds refit, secure from sight, beneath a pleasing shade, where tufted trees a native arbour made. Again the holy fires on altars burn, and once again the ravenous birds return, or from the dark recesses where they lie, or from another quarter of the sky. With filthy claws their odious meal repeat, and mix their loathsome ordures with their meat. I bid my friends for vengeance then prepare, and with the hellish nation wage the war. They as commanded for the fight provide, and in the grass their glittering weapons hide. Then when along the crooked shore we hear their clattering wings and saw the foes appear, Misenus sounds a charge, we take the alarm, and our strong hands with swords and bucklers arm. In this new kind of combat all employ their utmost force, the monsters to destroy. In vain the fated skin is proof to wounds, and from their plumes the shining sword rebounds. At length rebuffed they leave their mangled prey, and their stretched pinions to the skies display. Yet one remained, the messenger of fate, high on a craggy cliff Selanus sate, and thus her dismal errand did relate. What, not contented with our oxen slain, dare you with heav'n an impious war maintain, and drive the Harpies from their native reign? Heed therefore what I say, and keep in mind what Jove decrees, what Phoebus has designed. And I, the Furies' queen, from both relate, you seek the Italian shores, foredoom'd by fate. The Italian shores are granted you to find, and a safe passage to the port assigned. But know, that ere your promis'd walls you build, my curses shall severely be fulfill'd. Fierce famine is your lot for this misdeed, reduced to grind the plates on which you feed. She said, and to the neighbouring forest flew. Our courage fails us, and our fears renew. Hopeless to win by war, to prayers we fall, and on the offended Harpies humbly call. And where the gods or birds obscene they were, our vows for pardon and for peace prefer. But old Anchises offering sacrifice, and lifting up to heav'n his hands and eyes, ador'd the greater gods. Avert, said he, these omens render vain this prophecy, and from th' impending curse a pious people free. Thus having said, he bids us put to sea. We loose from shore our hawsers and obey, and soon with swelling sails pursue the watery way. Amidst our course Zacyntian woods appear, and next by rocky Neritus we steer. We fly from Ithaca's detested shore, and curse the land which dire Ulysses bore. At length Leucata's cloudy top appears, and the sun's temple which the sailor fears. Resolved to breathe a while from labour past, our crooked anchors from the prow we cast, and joyful to the little city haste. Here, safe beyond our hopes, our vows we pay to Jove, the guide and patron of our way. The customs of our country we pursue, and Trojan games on Actian shores renew. Our youth their naked limbs besmear with oil, and exercise the rustler's noble toil. Pleased to have sailed so long before the wind, and left so many Grecian towns behind. The sun had now fulfilled his annual course, and Boreas on the seas displayed his force. I fixed upon the temple's lofty door the brazen shield which vanquished Abas bore. The verse beneath my name and action speaks. These arms Aeneas took from conquering Greeks. Then I command to weigh, the seamen ply their sweeping oars, the smoking billows fly. The sight of high Phaeacia soon we lost, and skimmed along Epirus' rocky coast. Then to Chaonia's port our course we bend, and landed to Buprotus heights ascend. Here wondrous things were loudly blazed fame, how Helenus revived the Trojan name, and reigned in grief that Priam's captive son succeeded Pyrrhus in his bed and throne, and fair Andromache restored by fate once more was happy in a Trojan mate. I leave my galleys riding in the port, and long to see the new Dardanian court. By chance the mournful queen before the gate then solemnized her former husband's fate. Green altars raised in turf with gifts she crowned, and sacred priests in order stand around, and thrice the name of hapless Hector sound. The grove itself resembles Ida's wood, and seawards seemed that well-dissembled flood. But when at nearer distance she beheld my shining armour and my Trojan shield, astonished at the sight, the vital heat forsakes her limbs, her veins no longer beat. She faints, she falls, and scarce recovering strength, thus with a faltering tongue she speaketh at length. "Are you alive, O goddess born?" she said. "Or if a ghost, then where is Hector's shade?" At this she cast a loud and frightful cry. With broken words I made this brief reply: "All of me that remains appears in sight. I live, if living, to below the light. No phantom, but I dread a wretched life, my fate resembling that of Hector's wife. What have you suffered since you lost your lord? By what strange blessing are you now restored? Still are you Hector's, or is Hector fled, and this remembrance lost in Pyrrhus' bed?" With eyes dejected in a lowly tone, after the modest pause she's thus begun: "O only happy maid of Priam's race, whom death delivered from the foe's embrace, commanded on Achilles' tomb to die, not forced like us to hard captivity, or in a haughty master's arms to lie. In Grecian ships unhappy we were born, endured the victor's lust, sustained the scorn. Thus I submitted to the lawless pride of Pyrrhus, more a handmaid than a bride. Cloyed with possession he forsook my bed, and Helen's lovely daughter sought to wed. Then me to Trojan Helenus resigned, and his two slaves in equal marriage joined. Till young Orestes pierced with deep despair, and longing to redeem the promised fair, before Apollo's altar slew the ravisher. By Pyrrhus' death the kingdom we regained, at least one half with Helenus remained. Our part from Chaon he Chaonia calls, and names from Pergamus his rising walls. But you, what fates have landed on our coast? What gods have sent you, or what storms have tossed? Does young Ascanius life and health enjoy, saved from the ruins of unhappy Troy? Oh, tell me how his mother's loss he bears, what hopes are promised from his blooming years, how much of Hector in his face appears?" She spoke and mixed her speech with mournful cries, and fruitless tears came trickling from her eyes. At length her lord descends upon the plain, in pomp attended with a numerous train, receives his friends and to the city leads, and tears of joy amidst his welcome sheds. Proceeding on another Troy I see, or in less compass Troy's epitome. A rivulet by the name of Xanthus ran, and I embrace the Scaean gate again. My friends in porticos were entertained, and feasts and pleasures through the city reigned. The tables filled the spacious hall around, and golden bowls with sparkling wine were crowned. 2 days we passed in mirth, till friendly gales blown from the supplied our swelling sails. Then to the royal seer I thus began: O thou who knowest beyond the reach of man the laws of heaven and what the stars decree, whom Phoebus taught unerring prophecy from his own tripod and his holy tree, skilled in the winged inhabitants of air, what auspices their notes and flights declare. O say, for all religious rites portend a happy voyage and a prosperous end, and every power and omen of the sky direct my course for destined Italy. But only dire Celaeno from the gods a dismal famine fatally forebodes. O say, what dangers I am first to shun, what toils vanquish, and what course to run. The prophet first with sacrifice adores the greater gods, their pardon then implores, unbinds the fillet from his holy head. To Phoebus next my trembling steps he led, full of religious doubts and awful dread. Then with his god possessed before the shrine, these words proceeded from his mouth divine. O goddess born, for heaven's appointed will, with greater auspices of good than ill, foreshows thy voyage and thy course directs. Thy fate conspire, and Jove himself protects. Of many things some few I shall explain, teach thee to shun the dangers of the main, and how at length the promised shore to gain. The rest the fates from Helenus conceive, and Juno's angry power forbids to tell. First then that happy shore that seems so nigh, will far from you deluded wishes fly. Long tracts of seas divide your hopes from Italy, for you must cruise along Sicilian shores, and stem the currents with your struggling oars. Then round the Italian coast your navy steer, and after this to Circe's island wear. And last, before your new foundations rise, must pass the Stygian lake, and view the nether skies. Now mark the signs of future ease and rest, and bear them safely treasured in thy breast. When, in the shady shelter of a wood, and near the margin of a gentle flood, thou shalt behold a soul upon the ground, with 30 sucking young encompassed round. The dam and offspring white as falling snow, these on thy city shall their name bestow. And there shall end thy labours and thy woe, nor let the threatened famine fright thy mind, for Phoebus will assist, and fate the way will find. Let not thy course to that ill coast be bent, which fronts from far the Epirian continent. Those parts are all by Grecian foes possessed, the salvage Locrians here the shores infest. The fierce Idomeneus his city builds, and guards with arms the Salentinian fields. And on the mountain's brow Petelia stands, which Philocetus with his troops commands. Even when thy fleet is landed on the shore, and priests with holy vows the gods adore, then with a purple veil involve your eyes, lest hostile faces blast the sacrifice. These rites and customs to the rest commend, that to your pious race they may descend. End of Book 3, Part 1 of the Aeneid. Read by Lars Rolander.
Get it. You scared? Still.
What's wrong? You tired? Then stand back. I'll take care of this.
No, you stand back.
I told you, you can't do it. Don't you get it?
Get out of my way! Get out of my sight! Get ready!
Still.
Get out of my way! do you care so much?
This whole business started with my father sealing the entrance between the two worlds. And now, my brother's trying to break that spell and turn everything into Demonville. This is my family matter, too. Quite frankly, at first, I didn't give a damn. But because of you, I know what's important now. I know what I need to do.
Wait.
Trust me, I'll make things right for you. That's what my soul is telling me to do.
Use this.
How much is it gonna cost me?
You can give me your name.
Dante.
Dante. Please. Free my father.
I will, lady.